The President of the United States pushing the bounds of his executive power farther and farther across so many realms of American life, including the courts, the legal profession, the media, and elite education. Now he's going head-to-head with the nation's oldest and wealthiest institution of higher learning, Harvard University.
Unfortunately, Harvard has not taken the president or the administration's demands seriously.
The White House is taking on Harvard after it became the first of the elite universities to defy the administration's efforts.
Donald Trump just threatened to revoke Harvard's tax-exempt status and freeze billions in federal funding unless they follow his political agenda. The excuse? Anti-Semitism on campus. The reality? This is the next move in Project 2025's war on independent institutions. From universities to the courts, this isn't about free speech. It's about control. Let's break it down.
To take on so-called woke campus policies, restrictions that the university says amount to unacceptable limits on freedom of expression. Last night, the administration froze more than $2 billion in federal grants to the university. And today, the president is threatening Harvard's tax-exempt status, suggesting in a post on his Truth Social platform that it should be, quote, taxed as a political entity, end quote, unless it acts in, quote, the public interest.
When it comes to Harvard, as I said, the president has been quite clear they must follow federal law. He also wants to see Harvard apologize, and Harvard should apologize for the egregious anti-Semitism that took place on their college campus against Jewish American students.
Hold up. Since when is apologize or else the rule of law? This isn't governance, it's extortion. Trump's not defending Jewish students. He's using their pain as cover to blackmail Harvard into ideological compliance. This is state-sponsored censorship dressed up as justice. If the left did this to Liberty University, the right would be calling it Stalinism.
Trump officials portray their fight against the most prestigious and liberal universities as an effort to combat anti-Semitism after contentious campus protests against the Israel-Hamas war in Gaza. Harvard sees the battle differently. Its president declaring the university will not surrender its independence or relinquish its constitutional rights. Let's start with our panel. CNN contributor and co-host of the Interview podcast at the New York Times, Lulu Garcia-Navarro. CNN political commentator, Republican pollster, Kristen Soltis-Anderson. Former senior advisor to both the Biden and Harris presidential campaigns, Adrian Elrod. And CNN senior political commentator, Scott Jennings, is here. Welcome to all of you. Thank you very much for being here. Kristen Soltis-Anderson, I want to start with you on the big picture for Harvard University and the way that the administration is doing this, because there's $2 billion already on the line. There are billions more that could be affected, those grants funding things like cancer research. But of course, there has been that explosion of protest. We've seen many anti-Semitic incidents on a lot of these campuses, and this has become a real lightning rod on the right. Of all of the things that we have seen happen so far this week, the number of things that certainly Democrats are basically apoplectic about, how do you see this confrontation with Harvard and other elite institutions fitting in?
So a confrontation with an institution like Harvard is one where Trump has picked a very ripe target. Confidence in higher education has really been plummeting in this country over the last decade. Even as recently as 2015, Gallup found a majority of Republicans said when you asked, do you have confidence in higher education? They said yes. And those numbers have fallen. They've fallen precipitously for Republicans, but also for Democrats. And I think part of the problem is, to quote Office Space, the question of what is it you would say you do here? That for a lot of institutions of higher education, that's not a question that they've clearly answered. And so when you ask people, why don't you have confidence? They think they've veered too far off mission. Some of these institutions, as you noted, they contain multitudes, right? They do great things like cancer research, but they have other things that I think a lot of taxpayers may be saying, I don't know if I want to fund this. Trump has sensed that, and that's why he views them as such a good target.
I will say, Lulu, these institutions of higher learning have educated an awful lot of the bipartisan people who come here to Washington and end up in positions of power.
I was about to say, it's always surprising to me that Harvard is like put as this kind of liberal bastion when you think about a number of Republicans and Wall Street executives who've gone there.
Yeah, well, we can put up a number of the Trump allies who attended Harvard. Now, I will say that the youngest of those that you see on your screen are about my age, so they're elder millennials, so perhaps a lot has changed in the intervening time. But I think I really take Kristen's point, right? For the middle of the country, beating up on Harvard is not a problem for them, right? But on the other hand, there does seem to perhaps be some hypocrisy going on as well.
I mean, I think to Kristen's point, and we saw this with the DEI fight, there was a reason that they did that first with Harvard, affirmative action, et cetera. Harvard is a ripe target. If you've never been there, and you always know people who've been to Harvard, they'll tell you in the first 5 seconds that they went to Cambridge. They were in Cambridge. It's very annoying to the rest of us.
They went to a college outside Boston. I actually went to Cambridge, the original, for graduate school. So some people will say this to me. I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm not as highbrow as those of you who went to the second Cambridge, at least.
So you can see, just even in our conversation, it brings up some animus. But the wider context within which this sits is, of course, what is the purpose of what the administration is doing here? And we know from Chris Rufo, from Project 2025, and other ideas that have been put out there that they want to really take down anything that is viewed as the quote-unquote liberal establishment. And so what the administration asked of Harvard wasn't just about anti-Semitism. They asked things that were about who they admit.
This isn't just a Trump tantrum. This is Chris Rufo's blueprint in real time. Project 2025 wants to turn universities into loyalty factories. Step 1, gut DEI. Step 2, stack faculty with ideologues. Step 3, rewrite what education even means. This isn't about anti-Semitism. It's about creating a controlled intellectual monoculture.
Who gets tenure, things that are, quite frankly, not the remit of the federal government. And if you think about how Republicans have accused Democrats over and over again of weaponizing government, of weaponizing the federal government, here we're seeing this administration actually push into something that has never really been done in the same way before.
I mean, Scott Jennings, that seems like a fair point. I mean, if Democrats were doing this in a way that conservatives felt like was taking on some of their interests in these higher institutions, I feel like I would hear you talking about, hey, government's supposed to be more limited.
Why would Democrats be complaining about Harvard? Like 96% of the political contributions from the faculty go to Democrats from Harvard. There's no diversity of thought among the faculty there. And by the way, I should say, I've had some experience with it. I was a fellow at the IOP. Kristen was as well. I taught a class at the Harvard Kennedy School for a number of semesters. I had a good experience, but I think...
But no diversity of thought, apparently.
But I think in recent years, particularly since October the 7th, the civil rights of these Jewish students on campus have clearly been violated. I don't think the university, Harvard, Columbia, a lot of these other Ivies have taken near enough steps to protect these students. They've been chased around campus, barred from buildings. Buildings have been taken over. I mean, it's ridiculous what's going on. And here's the deal. They take federal money. They have a $53 billion endowment. They take federal money. If you want to continue to take federal money, you're going to have to listen to the people who dole it out. And that's the Trump administration who are standing up for these Jewish students. If they want to give up the federal money, you can create, I guess, the culture of hate that you want, and that's fine. But right now, they're entangled with the federal government, and they're going to have to deal with the president.
Nah, you deal with the law, not the dictator-in-chief. That's how it's supposed to work. Harvard doesn't serve Trump. Harvard doesn't serve Biden. It serves the people. And if we normalize the idea that presidents can withhold funding based on political loyalty, we're not just in a culture of war, we're in a soft coup.
Adrian, I mean, I will say what the Trump administration is trying to do goes well beyond the anti-Semitism question.
1,000%.
And the points that are very well taken from you, and I have spoken to a lot of Jewish students and families who are concerned about their Jewish students on these campuses. There are absolutely challenges there. But this is also DEI, it's hiring, admissions, it is looking at some of the viewpoint diversity. That seems like something we could argue about. But how do you see it?
Well, first of all, I think Chris is exactly right that this is something that this is where Trump is really good. His instincts are good. He knows he is delivering basically red meat to his base by saying, I'm going after a liberal institution like Harvard. I also agree with your point that what would happen if Republicans, all of a sudden, if Oral Roberts University or some of these super conservative, Republican-leaning organizations were also targeted by Democrats. So it goes both ways. I think the bottom line is this. This sets a dangerous precedent. If Harvard caves on this, which so far they have not, they've stood very firm and strong. If they cave on this, this sets a very dangerous precedent for universities that are not as well funded as Harvard. Harvard is the wealthiest university in the country, but what if we start going down the road with some of these universities that could be targeted that don't have the endowments that Harvard does? So I think, in the words of Barack Obama, who tweeted last night, applauds Harvard for standing strong against unlawful and ham-handed attempts by Donald Trump to stifle free speech and public education. And I think that that's the point that Democrats need to continue to drive, and anyone who wants to support.
Trump's threat to Harvard isn't about stopping hate, it's about centralizing power. And what's wild is Harvard isn't even radical. Their biggest donors are Wall Street Republicans. Their grads run both parties. But that's the point. If they can bully Harvard, they can bully anyone. Every state school, every think tank, every teacher. So if you're done watching both parties turn education into a battlefield for billionaire propaganda, subscribe now, drop "not your university" in the comments, and share this with 3 people still clinging to the illusion that this is just about campus speech. Stay angry, stay focused, stay free. Peace out.